Something about this story doesn't sit right, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Before we go deeper, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just another celebrity rumor, it's something that has made even insiders uncomfortable. It started quietly, not with headlines, not with breaking news alerts, but with comments, small ones, scattered across social media, people noticing tiny details that didn't quite match their memory. A smile that felt slightly delayed, eyes that didn't carry the same energy, a presence that felt off. At first, it was easy to ignore. After all, we're talking about someone who has spent decades transforming himself into characters, someone whose entire career is built on becoming someone else. So naturally, people assumed it's just another phase, another look, another artistic shift. But then, the appearances kept happening, and each time, the feeling got stronger. There's a strange thing about human perception. We may not always understand what's wrong, but we can feel it, and that feeling began spreading faster than anyone expected. Videos started circulating, side-by-side comparisons appeared, old interviews versus new ones, expressions versus expressions. The difference wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent, and consistency is what turns doubt into suspicion. When he stepped onto that stage in Paris, under those bright lights, it should have been a celebration, a moment of recognition, a lifetime of work honored in front of the world. But instead of applause being the loudest thing in the room, it was the whispers. Because people weren't just watching him, they were studying him. And the more they watched, the more questions appeared. His posture felt unfamiliar, like someone still adjusting to a body that didn't quite belong to them. His facial movements were slightly delayed, like reactions were being processed instead of felt. Even the way he paused between sentences, those small gaps felt unnatural, not wrong enough to confirm anything, but not normal enough to ignore. And here's where it gets interesting, because the internet didn't just react, it investigated. Within hours, clips from previous years started resurfacing, interviews, red carpet moments, behind-the-scenes footage. People began analyzing everything, his walk, his hand movements, even the way his eyes tracked the room. Some said it was aging, others blamed stress, a few suggested medical reasons. But then came the deeper questions. What if it wasn't just change? What if it was replacement? Now, that sounds extreme, and it should, because normally ideas like that belong in movies, not reality. But the human mind works in a very specific way. When enough small inconsistencies stack up, it starts searching for bigger explanations, and that's exactly what happened here. Because it wasn't just his face, it was his behavior. One of the biggest things people noticed was silence, not the peaceful kind, but the intentional kind, the kind where questions are clearly heard but deliberately ignored. And for someone known for humor, spontaneity, and unpredictability, silence felt completely out of character. Think about it. This is someone who built a career on reacting, on improvising, on turning even the most basic interaction into something memorable. And now suddenly, nothing. No jokes, no deflection, no quirky responses, just quiet. And silence in situations like this doesn't calm people, it amplifies everything. Because when there are no answers, people create their own. And some of those answers began pointing in directions no one expected. There were claims, unverified, unclear, but persistent, that something had changed behind the scenes months before that appearance, that conversations had felt distant, interactions had felt distant. People who had worked closely with him didn't directly say anything alarming, but they didn't deny the change either. And sometimes what people don't say speaks louder than what they do. During one recording session, someone who had spent time around him mentioned something subtle. Not dramatic, not headline-worthy, just a feeling, a sense that he wasn't fully present, that even when he was speaking, there was a layer of distance, like part of him was somewhere else. Now that alone doesn't prove anything, but when combined with everything else, it starts forming a pattern. And patterns are dangerous, because once people see a pattern, they can't stop looking for more. Another detail surfaced, small but significant, something most people wouldn't even notice unless they were looking closely. Hand dominance. For years, he had been known for using one hand consistently. It was visible in interviews, public appearances, even casual fan interactions. But suddenly, that changed, and not gradually, instantly. Now, again, on its own, this could mean nothing. People switch habits, injuries happen, adjustments are made. But in the context of everything else, it didn't feel random. It felt like another piece of something bigger. And then came the physical details, not just the face, but the eyes. Because eyes are difficult to fake. They carry memory, emotion, recognition, and people started noticing that something about them felt different. Not just color, but depth, expression, the way they reacted to light, to movement, to people. Surgeons online began giving opinions. Some said it could be procedures, others weren't so sure. Because even with surgery, certain things don't change that easily. And yet here they were, changed. At this point, the conversation had moved beyond curiosity. It had become a full-blown mystery. But here's where things take a different turn. Because maybe the answer isn't as dramatic as people think. Maybe it's not about clones. Maybe it's not about replacements. Maybe it's about something far more human. Because when you look at his life, really look at it, you see a pattern of transformation that has always existed. From struggling beginnings to explosive success, to philosophical shifts that made people question everything he said. This is someone who has openly talked about identity not being real, about the idea that the person the world sees is just a character, that fame itself is an illusion. So what if this isn't something new? What if this is just the next phase of that same journey, a deeper transformation, one that doesn't just change how he acts, but how he exists? Because imagine living a life where millions of people think they know you, but none of them actually do, where every expression is analyzed, every movement is recorded, every word is turned into headlines. At some point, something has to give. And maybe what people are seeing now isn't something being added. Maybe it's something being removed. The persona, the mask, the version of him that the world expects. And what's left behind feels unfamiliar because it's real, or at least closer to real than anything we've seen before. But still, that doesn't explain everything, because there are still moments, brief ones, where everything feels normal again, where the old energy comes back, where the expressions align perfectly with memory. And then, just as quickly, it disappears. And that's what keeps this mystery alive. Not the obvious differences, but the inconsistency. Because if something was completely different, people would accept it. If it was completely the same, people wouldn't question it. But this sits right in the middle. And that's where doubt grows the strongest. So the question isn't just what happened. The real question is, are we witnessing change, or are we witnessing something we're not meant to fully understand? Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden, it's just uncomfortable. And maybe that's why no one is giving clear answers. Not because they can't, because they don't want to. So now it comes down to you. What do you think is really going on here? Is this just transformation or something deeper? Comment your thoughts, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this don't end, they evolve.